I got the email that it was like approved NBA credential, I started bawling my eyes out.
People think it's very different, like being on TV versus competing, but there's a lot of thinking on your feet quickly.
Journalism will survive in some form or another, and it needs people to be dedicated to it, and I'm there for that.
If I had to say something to, me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before I started this whole journey, it would be just to take the risks.
My favorite quote that I always say all the time is, the answer is always no unless you try.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Holden Sherman's Conversations. Today's guest is someone who did his own thing. He started working for a national network right after he graduated college. He's got over 65,000 followers on his social media accounts, and he's a broad and podcaster for the tennis channel. Gill Gross, everyone.
Holden, great to be on. Looking forward to chatting.
Yes, and also full disclosure, I don't have many of them on, but Gill Gross is a Syracuse graduate, so we both have that Syracuse tie. We'll make sure if we start talking about Syracuse jargon, it's cleared up, so you're not talking so you know what we're talking about. First question, though, I want to talk about practicing how you play, right? You didn't wait till after you graduated to start your own entity. You were making videos back in 2017 in interviewing tennis analysts. Was that shift from being a college student, doing your own thing, to working for a national network easier because of that? Or like, what were kind of the struggles / what was that experience like to start?
Yeah, you kind of have to go back to high school really to kind of source out the root of how I started doing my own thing, as you put it. And, really it was a luxury of knowing what I wanted to do very early on and wanting to do something about it. And the story goes, I was interning at a radio station when I was in high school. Just a traditional terrestrial radio station. They had me. I honestly got it through a connection through my dad. I was not paid. I was not very heavily vetted, to be honest, but I was hired for the summer. And they started me out doing sports updates. I eventually got more and more of a role on that show. And then the radio station, as so many local radio stations around the country have done, unfortunately, it shut down. It went away. So I ended up having really 2-ish years, at least my senior year of high school, with no way to actually practice what I wanted to do. Because I knew at that time I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I did PA for my high school teams, but that's a different kind of broadcasting. A lot of fun, but not really what I was looking for. I wanted an outlet to share my opinions. And it was actually my dad was in the tech industry, and he was visionary enough to be like, look, you don't need somebody's permission to do a show. You can just do a show now. YouTube at that point is a thing. So I start doing a show about kind of everything. At that point, I was following the mold of a Colin Cowherd, Stephen A. Smith. I'm an expert on 4 things at once, which is a model I've since gotten away from. And when I went to college,
all people who study media have that face. We all have that face.
Heartening. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that I'm not alone.
Not alone.
Yeah, when I went to college, I could have given it up. Like, there was a very decent chance that I was going to give it up. But I think the audience that I had already established at that point, and I kind of had this sense that it was a special thing that I was doing, or at least it had the potential to become a special thing when I looked at, okay, how many different countries have I reached through this YouTube channel? And this video did really well, and that video did well. It was just enough that I didn't give it up. And I created a model of something that I could do consistently. And I did it all 4 years of college as a result. I think I went tennis only midway through my freshman year, or maybe towards the end of my freshman year. That's where I was like, you know what? If this is going to work, this is going to be a tennis media enterprise, not a sports media enterprise.
Was there, when you made that shift to be like, this is going to be all tennis, was there like, did you feel like you lost a part of yourself? Like, because you're like, no, I can't do everything at once. Like, what did that feel like?
No, not really. And part of it was I was at Syracuse, and I knew that I was going to get opportunities. At least at that point, I was hoping to get opportunities at the TV station and at the radio station, covering football and basketball and lacrosse and all that stuff. So I knew that I was going to kind of keep my, what is that term? Your beak wet, whatever. I knew that I was going to be able to have my, get my reps in those areas.
Your reps, okay.
Yeah. I wasn't concerned about that, but the audience And something told me, and this ended up being, I guess, one of the more smart decisions I've made. Something just made me realize, look, the way this is going to work is through my niche and deeper understanding of tennis. I'm going to go more in depth. I'm going to get more granular and more detailed than anybody else in this space. That is going to be my edge. That is what's going to set me apart. I had zero chance or zero ability to do that in football, basketball, hockey, or baseball. I love those sports. And I had decent knowledge of all those sports. Notice I used the past tense because it has deteriorated to some extent. But there was no chance that I was going to out X's and O's somebody in football. And I think what we've seen in the internet age is the coverage of sports has become a little bit smarter, particularly outside of the traditional spheres, outside of regular talk radio and regular talk TV. Like these podcasts, they are mainly specialized because specialization enables smarter coverage.
Why did you feel that way? If you could master tennis, why couldn't you master basketball or football?
Good question. I played tennis my whole life. I had really, really smart coaches, and I engaged with it on a level that was beyond the other sports when it came to the technicalities.
Okay.
And the other factor there is less competition. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you go to Syracuse, as you and I well know, and it is the number one destination for kids who want to cover sports for a living, there is going to be, they're all going to know at a certain level the NFL, and many of them will know the NBA, and many of them will be really into baseball. When it comes to tennis, in my 4 years at Syracuse, I was really the only guy who had a great grasp of tennis. There were a few guys who had a pretty I would say fundamental understanding. They played in high school. They have the scoring. They know some players. But I was the only guy who was going to be able to analyze it at a high level, to be honest.
Did it ever feel lonely, or did you need to really rely on the people who support you when you're kind of zagging when everyone else is zigging, right? Everyone around you is at a great journalism school. They're, trying to be the next Bob Costas or Nick Wright, talking about basketball and football, and you're doing tennis. How did you kind of stay in it?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was, again, I was involved in the other stuff, and at the more traditional student media opportunities, I was taking all of those. My tennis thing on the side, I don't think it was difficult to stay the course, other than the extra workload I would put on myself and the commitment that it took. That was the hard part. The hard part was on Sunday nights, I was not available because there was a men's final on Sunday and I had to do a podcast. That was the hard part. But it was very clear to me at a certain point, what drove me. This sounds so corny and cheesy. The audience drove me. If nobody was watching, I would have stopped. I will admit that. It was not something that, and look, patience is very important on the internet. And I'm not necessarily telling anybody that they should stop doing something if people aren't watching, right? Not what I'm saying. But when stuff got really hard, let's say, the reason why it was really not difficult to keep on going is because I started to feel a connection to my audience, and I started to feel an obligation to nurture that audience. I did not want to go dark on them. So that made it pretty easy.
So it was kind of a self-created purpose.
Yeah, I think when your content finds people who are interested in it and enjoying it, there's nothing more motivating. There's nothing that is a better driver to keep doing that. And then, I do think that I felt there were people who did encourage me. There were people who said, wow, this is amazing. You're doing this thing on your own, and you have whatever I had at that point, even if it was 5,000 subscribers. I remember, to be honest, I remember feeling like, wow, I have more subscribers than the student TV station at Syracuse. I have more subscribers than Citrus TV. I remember thinking that to myself at the time. And meanwhile, Citrus TV is an organization with a really, really high tech studio
Yeah.
and a bunch of students
They just redid
putting
the
in a
studio a couple months
combined,
ago, actually.
what's that?
They just redid the studio about 6 months ago.
I saw that actually. Yeah. But like, think about it. The operation that is Citrus TV is a combined, like, how many hours of labor go into that every day?
So
How
intense.
much
So
the
intense.
combined talent, even at a student level, the combined talent that goes into that place every day. Like, and I was like, oh, wow, as an internet product, more people want to watch me. So it's like, I had certain cues and signals that just told me like, all right, I'm on the right track here.
But at the same time, um, everyone is committing hours and hours a part of a TV station that is very laborious, and you're doing your own thing. There had to be people who kind of doubted you, right? Being like, well, you're doing something untraditional. You could fizzle out at any time or anything like that. I just feel like from all my
Yeah.
conversations with people, even if they're having success, if you're zagging when everyone else is zigging, you feel something. If you feel some doubt or you're not sure sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm sure there was plenty of doubt. I mean, how much of that made it to my ears, right? Who
Right.
is willing to tell me that? That's
Yeah.
really the question, right? I will say, like, I remember sitting in a class with a professor who I love. I'm not even gonna say his name.
Tell me off
Um,
camera. I want to know if he's still here. Off camera.
okay, okay, I will. But your hint will be he's like also a prominent member in the Syracuse media, so like people
Oh,
know who he
okay.
is.
Okay. Okay.
But he was saying something that isn't at face value wrong. But I was sitting in a class and he said, you know, podcasting, there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But there's one massive rule here. You must have multiple voices. You cannot do it by yourself. And here I am sitting there and I have a monopod. I sometimes have guests,
Yeah.
but the core product of my podcast is actually me monologuing, which goes against rules and it's not similar to what most podcasts are, but that's an example of one scenario where like I'm literally sitting in a class and the professor is like, "Don't do that." The thing that I'm doing.
Yeah. That's kind of what I meant. Did having like multiple skills, like I know you can do play by play, obviously you can podcast. Did having those skills keep the dream alive in that post grad period where everyone's trying to get their feet settled?
Post grad, my plan A was to work in tennis, but I had no illusions about how difficult that potentially could be because one aspect of it being a niche sport and just the general structure of it, there just aren't that many jobs. So
Yeah.
I certainly hoped to work in tennis post grad, but I did not know that that was going to happen. And I had plan A, B, C, and D. And plan A ended up working out with tennis. What was your question?
Well, I'm saying like you aren't just a podcaster. You can
Yeah,
analyze things, you can do play by play. A lot of times, and I've heard, Colin and Samir.
Colin Samir.
Colin and Samir.
Oh, no, actually.
They're very famous podcasters, have their own YouTube channel. They've got Mr. Beast on it sometimes. They talk about, being an entrepreneur on YouTube or just creating your own entity. They talk about like the best place to start when you want to be a content creator is to have a job first. So what I'm saying is like
Oh, yeah.
having the fact that you could call play by play and doing other things help you actually help your podcast.
Huge, yeah. And if we can get to some like real world stuff here, it's the piggy bank for my podcast. It's the
Yeah.
reason why I don't
Yeah.
need to sweat. Uh, I don't need to pay the bills with my content. And that's pretty crucial because as I don't know, like however you measure the amount of success that I've had, and some might say awesome, some might say okay, like it's all arbitrary. It depends who you're comparing it to. Um, the fact is, it's very difficult, especially in a niche space like tennis. It's really difficult to just do this and have it sustain yourself. So yeah, it's taken the pressure off and it's allowed me to stay the course, keep it up, focus on the quality of the content, make incremental improvements in the podcast, and I'd say in air quotes the media company overall with things that I'm doing with it. And it's worked out really well because they feed into each other.
Yeah.
What I'm doing as a tennis commentator, and in some ways, from a time resource standpoint, they take away from one another. There's no doubt about that. But in so many other ways, they feed into each other and help each other. When I'm doing my content, that means I'm spending time researching tennis, formulating opinions on tennis, looking into stats and all that. These are things that I might be able to use down the road when I'm on the air in a traditional sense. And then vice versa, when I'm calling matches and I'm working with analysts who are really smart, insightful tennis minds, I'm taking things that I can bring over to the other side. So the fact that there's that synergy between both, that is a big help. And then obviously the financial aspect where it's dual income, but let's be honest, one income is more significant than the other, and that's the non-internet side,
Yeah.
is pretty crucial.
And one is probably much more consistent than the other.
Well, the internet is consistent, but it's just got a much lower ceiling. Like, especially if you do the breakdown of what are you making for hours spent, hours put in. Like the breakdown for that when it comes to, especially if you go lifetime for YouTube, it would be bad. It would frankly be bad.
What are some of the downsides to working for a national network right out of college?
I would say if you're just not going to be as good as you want to be right away, and you might not know it at the time. And I didn't. And you shouldn't, right? Like you have to go in with the confidence. You have to feel good about what you're doing. And at the time, that's how I was attacking it. I was attacking it with confidence. And I'm sure that made me sound my best on the air. But then looking back, there is a sense of like, were you ready for prime time? And the answer on some levels is bound to be no, because you still have a lot of development ahead of you. And I would say that that's the biggest downside is you're not going to come in and take it by storm. It would be very difficult to do that because you're not fully baked as a broadcast professional yet.
What was your relationship with kind of experimenting? Because you're on a national network for a national, sports audience. You're not in the middle of Montana, small market.
Yeah, well, one challenge I'd say is at Syracuse, there's this culture of constant feedback. And it's probably the main reason why kids get so good at Syracuse is because all of the work that they do and they put on the air, you turn around and there's an upperclassman who knows more than you telling you you did this well, you did this well, but you did this like crap and this was shit.
Yeah.
And that's valuable. And then once you go out into the real world, I think like 95% of people in the industry would agree that pretty much goes away. And people aren't as upfront with you. So you really need to go out of your way to seek feedback. I think one of the biggest challenges was not hearing that anymore and not knowing, okay, well, how well am I doing? And feeling that insecurity and that anxiety of, how's my work being received? Like, am I doing well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just working through that mainly.
Have you ever like been scared to tell people your age because you're so young and so people may not feel like you're ready for the challenge or not, whether that's fair to you?
Yeah, well, I definitely kept my age quiet in terms of like on the internet,
Yeah.
publicly, and yeah, I didn't, I knew that that was something that could be used against me if there was the opportunity. But usually it would come like if somebody disagrees with me, they'll be like, oh, this kid doesn't know what he's talking about. But if they agree with me, then it's a non-issue. So usually it's just the weaponization of age when it's convenient. That said, it's something that I try to use as fuel and motivation when it comes to like Tennis Channel. Like, all right, I got to prove myself. It means I got to act real professional. It means I got to dress maybe a little more professionally. Um, yeah, there's definitely going to be people who look at you like I think I made no illusions about this, and I still don't. there are going to be older people who say, "What's going on here? This person's young and it's annoying that they're having success because they're young." So that's how it is. Like, I hope when I get older, I'm not like that. I haven't experienced that a ton firsthand. Again, a lot goes on, I'm sure, like behind your back that you don't know about. But I'm sure that there's been a lot of that. The one thing that I had to be careful with, though, and I definitely fell into this trap, as far as on air performance specifically, and this is mostly a play by play thing, you got to be careful not to try to sound a certain way, like to try to sound older than you are. And I think, especially when my actual voice and my sound was a little bit underdeveloped immediately out of college. I didn't sound like Jim Nance. I still don't. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not.
That's what people say about Noah Eagle. They say that about Noah Eagle.
What do they say?
They say like, like he's so good because he doesn't try to have an older voice. He has his voice. And he doesn't try to sound like his dad, even if they sound eerily similar. Like
I
that's
actually think Noah. I love both of them to death. I think Noah already has a deeper voice than his dad. I think
really.
Noah actually, yeah, I think Noah has more bass in his voice than his dad right now. But Ian is a role model for how to use the voice
Yeah.
because Ian doesn't have this like Dan Schulman, uh, who are some others like Dave O'Brien, even like Dave Pash. Like, he doesn't have this super bassy voice that I will
Kevin
say.
Harlan. Kevin Harlan's got a bassy voice.
Yeah, Harlan's got a unique sound. What about like Joe Tessitore,
Yeah.
right? It's just booming. It's got a ton of like volume to it. Ian doesn't have that, but what does he have in his voice? It's like he communicates energy, enthusiasm, excitement, inflection. So to bring it back around to me, there was a period in time where I think that I was just trying to live on too low a register because I was like trying to sound a little older than I was. That did not sound good on the air because you lose a sense of energy and inflection and color in your voice. So that was a pitfall. Like, that was one way in which my youth uh put me in a bad direction. But how did I get out of that? I got some feedback. I got some feedback of somebody saying, "Hey, you sound a little flat. Like, you sound a little low, one note." And it was, okay. I know why I sound one note. It's because I'm trying to overcompensate and I'm trying to do this. So I got to make the adjustment, and that's what it's all about.
Do you think part of that adjustment came from just like being in that space more? Like because like you start like out of college, you're post grad, you're working for the tennis channel, but like you're really doing the job the older you get and the more experience you're kind of living it more, if that makes more sense.
Yeah, you just get more comfortable. I mean, you still remember how you felt even in your stomach when you would go on the air. Like, my first few times, and I think this lasted a long time. Like, there's a certain like butterfly, there's a certain nervousness,
Yeah.
and then eventually that just starts to fade more and more and more to a point where you feel at home. It's okay to have some nerves. Uh, there's probably such thing as too far the other direction where you're too relaxed and there's a certain amount of nervousness that actually keeps you sharp. But yeah, there's definitely just settling in. Like everything else, it takes reps. But I think crucially, and what some people leave out, is they say it's just reps. It's not just reps, right? Because if you if you repeat bad habits, the reps are not leading you somewhere better. So it's reps and feedback and adjustments.
Yeah.
I think that's the complete, like, you have to complete it with the other stuff. It's not just reps.
Well, yeah, because you could be improving on X thing, but also deteriorating on Y thing. And then
Hmm.
the pendulum, you're going up here, but you're going down here in equal amount, where you're still kind of right here for all my visual viewers.
Yeah, I mean, if you take just sports for an example, if you have a flaw in your mechanics, whether you're a pitcher or a batter or a quarterback or a tennis player, and you train that shot over and over again with that flawed mechanic, you are not fixing it.
Yeah.
You are ingraining it.
Yeah. I want to switch the topic a little bit. You're talking about how, there's less jobs in tennis media compared to, football and basketball. But at the same time, your voice is larger. So your 40,000 followers, or about 40,000 followers on your YouTube channel is can do much more of an impact to that tennis community than 40,000 followers for an NBA channel. How do you take advantage of that, knowing that um, you have more weight with your audience than other sports?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to get more, the tennis space is starting to get more and more crowded, just like every other space. I mean, the proliferation of podcasts and YouTube shows and even Instagram and TikTok content, I think the era of democratization in that sense is very much here, and you're never really going to benefit anymore from scarcity. But I think the biggest thing that a lot of the big podcasts at this point benefit from or benefited from at one point is scarcity. Like Bill Simmons was early in the podcast game. The tennis podcast, which is the number one podcast in tennis, at least on the audio side, maybe not on YouTube, but on the audio side, they were like way, way, way early on. Joe Rogan like started his podcast in the early days of podcasting. And like, so these big Mark Maron, the comedian, his podcast has been around forever. So if you entered the space at a time where there weren't a lot of people there, that was a huge advantage. And that can still exist. But now it's about where can you kind of get ahead of the curve. And for some people, they might have been early on TikTok and it just wasn't very crowded there. And it was during the pandemic and they got really, or I know somebody who was early on Snapchat content. So there's all these different kinds of things. But event essentially, when I started doing tennis content on YouTube, it was basically me and three others. One of them went away at a certain point, so it was me and two others. And that at a time where I was still developing, and there was, I'm not going to say like I'm going to I'll give myself some credit. The foundation of good content was certainly there, but it wasn't a polished version of it. But at that time, the fact that there were not that many options in the space, it allowed an audience to find me, and it allowed um, that audience to grow with me. So I just think if you enter a niche space, you don't it does the space doesn't need to be niche, but I think just part of what's important on the internet is you're offering something that people haven't found yet. I think that's like a pretty fundamental tenet of how to how to create content that is going to find an audience. It needs to feel fresh in some ways. And for me, yes, there are aspects of the content I'm doing that isn't necessarily replicated anywhere else, but it was also at the time that I wasn't in a very crowded space.
But now you're Gill Gross. And what I mean by that is like someone could look at your track record and be like, okay, this guy's been making tennis content for like almost 10 years now. You have a built up track record. Like you're
Mhm.
not just someone new on a new platform. Like you've been doing this for
Yeah.
a long time. So when people look at your content now versus when they were looking at it while you were still in college or still in high school, it's got a different connotation because even though you're young, you're not young to the space. You're a veteran.
No. Yeah, I think less and less people look at me as young now because as you kind of mentioned, and Twitter helped with this as well. Like I used to be, this has waned big time, but I used to be pretty dedicated on Twitter. And I think anybody on tennis Twitter would have seen my name popping up on a somewhat regular basis in the late 2010s, early 2020s. And that's another contact point of name recognition. So yeah, I do think that obviously not everybody in tennis knows who I am, but I do feel I've gotten to a point where I've been around enough. If you're on the internet, if you're online, you've probably at some point crossed paths with me. And that is, I think, in some ways an accomplishment in itself, and it makes things easier going forward.
Have you ever had people come up to you in public?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that like?
Uh, it it feels good. Sort of formalization of the idea that you are actually reaching real people in the world who in fact exist. They are made of carbon is when they come up to you and they say, "Hey, I like your work. I saw your stuff." So I love it. It always does make me feel good because it means that the stuff I'm putting out there is reaching people. And at the end of the day, that's why you put stuff out there.
I know you said that you don't have that many like negative interactions online, but does having those, really genuine in-person interactions with your followers and fans, does that negate any negative voices that are online towards you?
I wish, maybe in some ways, but I'd kind of be lying if I said that it was really easy to like, if somebody strikes the right chord or hits the right button and it's something that bothers me, that happens. And I think it happens to most people, especially even people who aren't going to admit it. And there's something in the human mind that I hate, and I wish it wasn't the case. I wish that when 10 people said a nice thing and one person said a mean thing, that the 10 would just crush the one. And for some reason, it doesn't work like that. I don't know what it is about psychology, but the one ends up oftentimes taking up more space in your head than the 10. I don't know what it is. I wish we weren't like this. Maybe, and maybe it can be fixed. If it can, if there's a psychologist out there who can fix it, please call me up. But that would be my answer to that.
Sans psychologist, how do you manage it?
um, to be honest, how do I manage it? I started tweeting less. It was a space that to me, I started. Look, I think that, as I just mentioned, it helped me get my name out when I was younger. And that probably had some value. But then it reached a point where I started to do the pros and cons. I can see the data as far as how many people click on my videos from Twitter or find my channel from Twitter. And it's maybe 1%. Like, it's a small number. I don't get paid for tweeting. There's no money. So if I am finding that Twitter is making my day worse because I'm getting a lot of toxicity or people aren't reading, why am I doing it? I started to ask myself that question. Like, is the risk or is the pros and cons, does it really make sense to spend as much time as I used to on Twitter if it's putting me in a worse mood, it's making me less productive, it's making up, maybe a minuscule percentage of people who might discover my content in a way that actually helps me, and I'm not making any money from it. That became my calculus. So what have I done? I tweet less now, and when something controversial happens, I generally save it. I'm going to go in front of my microphone on my podcast and I'm going to talk about it there. I'm not going to tweet about it necessarily. Sometimes I might, but usually I'm not going to tweet about it. And if people want to know what I think, they know where to find it. And it's been a much better experience that way. And I'm just amazed nowadays when I do decide to tweet, when I do decide to go back to that, how often I regret it.
Well, that's also like the advantage of all the brunt work you've done to get yourself to a spot where it doesn't hurt you to just say, I'm just going to go podcast about this.
1000%. Because if I was still feeling as if I needed every ounce of hustle to get my name out there, I might feel differently. But yeah, I mean, what do I have on Twitter? I have my 18,000 followers, and I just feel like, to a certain extent, maybe this will change. It's kind of run its course on that platform for me and just my personal objectives and what I find important.
Something cool about doing your own thing is it can lead to different things. Like, I don't think you were probably planning on interviewing Jason Isaacs when you started your tennis podcasting journey. How do you kind of keep that mentality of keeping things kind of open as you're doing your own journey?
Yeah, well, I think one of the cool parts is I can be a little bit of an entrepreneur. I have some space to do that. And that is a part of the job that's exciting, also challenging because I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I didn't go to Whitman, I went to Newhouse. Uh,
Business school. It's a business.
so there you go. Yes. Um, so that's definitely an element of it, but also I hope tennis down the road can be a foot in the door into doing some other stuff. No, I don't think I'm close to that point. I think there's a lot of different things in tennis that I've yet to accomplish and, doors that I still hope to break through into. But once I kind of get to where I want to get to, that's where I think I would hope that it would lead to doing maybe some other stuff and expanding my purview. Like Holden, you told me off the air real quick that you were really into cooking and food.
Yeah.
Like that's an area I'm really passionate about as well. And like that would be an example of something like, oh, could accomplishing a lot in the content space open the door for me to do some food stuff? Like that's just one small example. I don't think that would be a major thing.
I guess I'm
But
planning some
yeah,
post grad with you already.
yeah, exactly.
Post grad content.
There you go. So yeah, who knows where it's going to take me? I think that's definitely something that's nice though about having an untraditional independent media content sphere that I'm in charge of is that I can kind of do what I want.
Performatively, like what do you need to do to get to where you want to be to broaden your sphere?
Well, I've got to keep growing within the organizations that I already work with. That's the ATP, that's Tennis Channel, that's the US Open. So, right now there's still a lot of goals and there's a lot of room for growth within those organizations. And I think content wise, it's incremental gains and it's constantly trying to figure out a way to grow the audience, to monetize more efficiently. Like all of these things are constantly being worked on. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in like a split second. So there's no magic potion or quick fix to any of it. But I've got some ideas. I mean, part of it is right now, if you want me to just share with you one, which I'm happy to do, the fact that I'm a solo pod, well, maybe there's room to kind of bring somebody in as a regular co-host who has a level of credibility and name recognition that I don't have. And maybe I've gotten to a point where I can make it worth it to them. Maybe I haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't know. But these are the kinds of things, and there's constantly things that you kick around. What's the next thing to make this better than it was last year? How is 2026 going to be better than 2025? I can tell you this year, I I had like no Instagram presence before this year. And I had some people who I trust say, "Hey, I mean, get on this. Like this could be really good for you." I got on it. And, so far I'm really glad I did it.
Do you have like a producer or editor for your own personal stuff?
Yeah, I have some social media help.
Okay. But it's very like light. So when you say you're a one-man band, you're the one grinding that uh video editing content late at night and everything like that for your pod?
Well, the show is all me,
Okay. So
but what's that?
you produce it.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I produce it, I edit it, I post it, I write the description, I do the title. I I sometimes do the thumbnails, sometimes I don't do the thumbnails. Sometimes that's somebody else. But yeah, I'm mainly doing it all when it comes to the show. A lot of the social media clips though are not produced by me.
How do you stay grateful? Like you've done so many cool things. I don't know if you plan on doing them all just 4 years after you graduated at college, like 4 years after you graduated college, but how do you stay grateful?
Yeah, you've got to. It's definitely like an active process though of once in a while looking around and being like, "Hey, you know, this is where you want it to be to some like look, everybody's just trying to kind of we we decide to do this because we're passionate about it and we love it and it doesn't feel like work. So if you can make that work at any level, I think that you should consider it a success. But it's a constant balance between being grateful of what you've done, but also you hold ambition, and that ambition can at times get in the way of the gratitude. I think what's really important is that you hold both at once and that you see both ends of it because you don't want to lose all of them. You don't want to be like, I'm great. This is sick. Um, and you just lose that edge. You want to strive for more, but you also don't want to become so jaded where you're not appreciative and grateful for what you're doing in the sense that like you have to enjoy like why are you even doing it? You're doing it, you've put in the work so that you can enjoy it when it's happening. And like I think the easiest time, honestly, to be grateful is when I'm at the US Open every year. And here's an event that I grew up attending as a fan. I was a ball boy at one point. Just the like if I knew at that age when I was attending as a fan that I would get to go there and broadcast every day, like that would be it. Like that's the dream. So just kind of staying in touch with that is so important.
What would you say to someone who's scared to start off creating their own content? They have the idea, but they're just scared of the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're not going to regret trying. Um, and it's just an incredible world nowadays. The fact that you don't need anybody's permission to reach an audience is an unbelievable power. And I just think taking advantage of it, or at least trying to take advantage of it, is such a worthwhile venture. And even if it fails at face value, you're gonna learn a lot, no matter what. And even if it's like, well, I started doing this, so I learned how to edit, or I started doing this, so I learned about cameras, or I started doing this, so I now know more about these social media algorithms and I know how to take advantage of them better. Whatever you learn, or let's say maybe it's like you've spent your whole life doing an hour long podcast and now you have to make it 30 seconds for TikTok. I learned how to be concise and package information quickly. Even if you don't hit the jackpot and find an audience, you're going to learn something within the process of doing it and trying it. So that's really what I would say.
This is my last question, and I ask this to every guest. So when I get big, this will be a sponsored segment. I know it. Um, what is advice that you would give to yourself when you published your first YouTube episode? I watched it preparing for this podcast. You've got a collared shirt on. You look amped up. You look like any 14-year-old who's trying to start a or 14, high schooler, sorry, who's trying to start a podcast. What would you say to that person with the advice that you know now?
Is that Keeping Score episode 1? Is that what you watched
You had an interview with a tennis analyst.
with Steve Flink? Okay.
Yeah, Steve Flink. Steve Flink.
Okay. Yeah, it's incredible because I still have him on. We still do interviews now. What would I say? Um,
I like this
I
pod.
would just say like that all the sacrifices are gonna be worth it and keep having fun with it. And I just think the journey and all of its kind of different like elements of doing all sports and then figuring out, okay, I just want to do this in tennis and then figuring out how do I do this out of a college dorm room and what's going to be the background and what is it going to look like and uh, what's the format going to be out of college. Like I think all of those steps were so necessary to take. There's no shortcuts. There's no fast forwarding that learning process. So really just to tell them like, you should be proud of the fact that you've started this, you've taken your leap of faith, and don't lose that guile. Keep making those leaps. And I think there have been a couple of times in my career so far where I've taken a little bit of a risk. And some of them haven't really felt like a big risk, but then people on the outside say like, whoa, that was a big risk you took. And I'd say just being confident in taking those risks has been really important.
You want to drop your socials?
Sure. At Gill Gross _ is the Instagram. Gill.gross is the TikTok. And Gill _gross is Twitter. My YouTube channel is just Gill Gross regular. And my podcast for, Spotify and audio listeners would be Monday Match Analysis. So it's a real plethora of ways to punctuate my name.
And that's 2 L's, right?
It's 2 L's. Yes. Good. I should actually just say that. Very good.
2 L's. Thank you all for watching another episode of Holden Sherman's Conversations. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss the latest from Holden Sherman's Conversations. Until next time.